The air is thick with mystery as Hector, the cemetery's lone caretaker, begins his routine in a haunted town in Mexico. But this day is different. Shadows seem to linger longer, whispers float on the breeze, and the weight of untold stories presses down on him. What if you could uncover the truth hidden in the graves? What if the secrets of the past were calling to you? This video will pull you deep into a chilling tale of murder, ghosts, and a desperate plea for justice. Are you ready to face the unknown and solve the mystery that's been buried for decades? The air hung thick with morning mist as I stepped into the cemetery, my sanctuary, and my prison. I, Hector, the gravekeeper of this small, haunted town in Mexico, embraced the solitude that enveloped me like a familiar shroud. Each day began the same way, with the sun barely peeking over the horizon, casting long shadows that danced between the weathered tombstones. The graves, each with their own story etched into stone, were my companions, and today, like every other day, I was determined to care for them with the respect they deserved. I knelt beside an aged grave, its surface cracked and overrun with wildflowers. "You've seen better days," I murmured, running my fingers over the faded inscription. "I promised to keep you company." The silence of the cemetery was profound, broken only by the distant chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves. It was a tranquil existence, yet I often felt a prickling sensation at the back of my neck, as if eyes were watching me from the shadows. I brushed it off as my imagination. After all, the past had a way of lingering in places like these. "Hey, Hector," a voice called out, breaking my reverie. I looked up to find Pedro, the town baker, strolling along the path with a basket in hand. "You're here early again? You know those spirits don't take kindly to outsiders meddling in their business." I chuckled, shaking my head. "You and your ghost stories, Pedro. They're just tales to keep children from wandering in here. I'm merely keeping the peace." "Just be careful," he warned, his eyes narrowing. "They say the cemetery has its share of restless souls." I waved him off, but his words lingered in my mind as I resumed my work. With each grave I tended, I felt an odd sense of connection, as if the stories of the deceased were whispering to me through the earth. I had learned to embrace the solitude, the quiet conversations that danced on the edge of my awareness. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the air grew heavier, a chill creeping in that sent a shiver down my spine. A sense of foreboding washed over me, but I couldn't quite place its origin. I finished my tasks and stood up, wiping my hands on my worn trousers. Just then, a whisper threaded through the air, soft but unmistakable. "Hector." I froze, heart racing, scanning my surroundings. "Who's there?" I called out, momentarily unsure if I was losing my mind. The cemetery was always quiet, but this was different. The voice was familiar yet foreign, a caress against my skin that sent chills down my spine. "Hector." It came again, more insistent this time, beckoning me. I followed the sound, my curiosity battling the instinct to flee. The mist seemed to swirl around me as I moved deeper into the cemetery, my breath quickening. The voice led me to a lonely grave, one I had never noticed before, marked by a weathered stone that bore the name Alonso. "Who are you?" I whispered, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the grave. Suddenly, the air grew frigid, wrapping around me like a cold embrace, and from the shadows emerged a translucent figure. My heart raced as the spirit took form. A man, his face twisted in sorrow, eyes glimmering with an otherworldly light. "Hector, I am Alonso," he said, his voice echoing like a distant bell. "I was murdered, and my body lies hidden. You must help me find my rest." "Alonso? Murdered?" The words tumbled from my lips, disbelief mingling with fear. "Why me? What can I do?" "I cannot rest until my murderer is brought to justice," he implored, desperation etched into his spectral features. "You are my only hope." I felt a strange sense of responsibility wash over me, my heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. "I will help you, Alonso," I promised, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "But I need to know everything." "Time is of the essence," he warned, fading slightly as the shadows closed in around him. "The truth is buried, and you must unearth it before it's too late." With that, Alonso vanished into the mist, leaving me standing alone by his grave, my heart pounding and my mind racing. I had just agreed to help a spirit find justice, and I knew that my life was about to change forever. The town's secrets were waiting to be uncovered, and I was the one chosen to dig them up. As I stepped into the dimly lit archives, the smell of old paper and dust filled my nostrils. It felt like stepping into a time capsule, a place where the past whispered secrets that were eager to be uncovered. I had decided to start my investigation into Alonso's murder in the very heart of our town's history, hoping to find clues that would lead me to the truth. Rows of shelves lined with brittle newspapers, bound volumes, and faded photographs greeted me. I pulled out a chair at a long wooden table, the surface rough beneath my fingertips, and began sifting through the yellowing pages. My heart raced as I found a newspaper article, dated back several decades. The headline screamed of a gruesome murder in San Pedro, and my pulse quickened as I read the details. Alonso's name was mentioned, but the specifics were vague, shrouded in the kind of mystery that only deepened my resolve. Murdered under suspicious circumstances, it stated. The body never recovered. The words echoed in my mind like a haunting refrain. Who could have done such a thing, and why? I leaned back in my chair, contemplating the implications. Suddenly, a voice broke through my thoughts. You shouldn't be digging into the past, Hector. I turned to find Isabel, the town's historian, standing in the doorway, her expression a mix of concern and resolve. Her presence was comforting yet unnerving, as if she carried the weight of the town's dark history on her shoulders. I have to, Isabel, I replied, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. Alonso needs my help, and I can't ignore that. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. You don't understand. There are rumors about a curse tied to that murder, a curse that has led to unexplained deaths in this town. Some things are better left buried. Are you suggesting I just walk away? That I abandon Alonso? I shot back, a surge of frustration bubbling within me. Isabel was right about one thing. There was an air of danger surrounding this investigation, but I couldn't turn my back on a spirit in need. Isabel sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. Just be careful, okay? The past has a way of ensnaring the unwary. Her voice softened. If you need help, I'm here. But promise me, you'll tread lightly. I nodded, appreciating her concern. I promise, but I have to know what happened. I need to find out who did this to him. As I left the archives, the weight of Isabel's warning lingered in my mind. The air outside was thick with tension, and I could feel the chill creeping in again, as if the shadows themselves were following me. I quickened my pace, glancing back occasionally, half expecting to see Alonso's ghost floating behind me. Instead, I was met with the empty streets of San Pedro, the town seemingly oblivious to the darkness lurking beneath its surface. I pulled out the article once more, searching for any mention of suspects. My eyes scanned the text, landing on a list of names that sent a shiver down my spine. Friends, acquaintances, and fellow townsfolk, people I had known my entire life. Could one of them have been involved in Alonso's death? I shook my head, trying to dispel the growing sense of dread pooling in my stomach. As I walked, the shadows lengthened, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I could feel someone, or something, watching me. The sensation prickled at the back of my neck, and I quickened my pace. I had to uncover the truth, but with each step, I felt the weight of the past pressing down on me, a reminder that some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. Suddenly, a soft whisper sliced through the silence, chilling me to the bone. Hector? The voice was unmistakably Alonso's, echoing in my mind. I paused, heart racing, and glanced around, half expecting to see him emerge from the shadows. But the street was empty, the only sound my own shallow breaths. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I'm coming, Alonso, I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. I knew I was diving headfirst into a world of danger and deception, but I also knew I could not turn back. I was bound to this quest, and the truth awaited me, whether I was ready or not. As I approached Julio's modest home, a sense of unease settled over me like a thick fog. The sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced eerily against the walls. I knocked on the wooden door, my heart racing. It creaked open slowly, revealing Julio, his face pale and drawn, as if he had seen a ghost himself. Hector, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. What brings you here at this hour? Julio, I need to talk to you about Alonso, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I know you were with him the night he was killed. He stepped aside, allowing me to enter, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. The living room was dimly lit, filled with the scent of old books and something more acrid, like burnt incense. Julio sat down heavily on a worn-out chair, his eyes darting toward the window. "Why now? Why dig up the past?" he asked, his voice shaky. "Because Alonso deserves justice," I said, holding his gaze. "You were there. You know something." He hesitated, gripping the edge of the chair as if it were a lifeline. "You have no idea what you're asking. The night he died, it was chaos. We were at the tavern. There were fights, shouting, and then he just disappeared." I leaned in, urgency tinging my voice. "Did you see anyone suspicious? Anyone who might have wanted to hurt him?" Julio's hands trembled as he rubbed his temples. "It was dark, Hector. I remember someone arguing with him, but I don't know who it was. I swear I didn't think it would end like this." "Did you ever think to follow up? To find out what happened?" I pressed. He looked up, eyes wide with a mix of fear and regret. "You don't understand. After that night, it was like a shadow fell over the town. People started to disappear. Those who talked too much, they were silenced. It's better to forget." "Better for whom?" I shot back, anger flaring within me. Alonso didn't get that choice. His face fell into a deep frown. "You're stirring up things that should remain buried. You might not like what you find." "I need to know the truth," I insisted. "Help me, Julio. Please." He glanced away, his gaze lingering on a photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. "You're asking me to betray my own." "Betrayal is what got Alonso killed," I interrupted, the heat of my words filling the room. "He deserves to be avenged, and if you know something, you owe it to him to speak up." Julio's eyes darkened, and I could see the internal battle waging within him. I can't do this," he murmured, shaking his head as if trying to rid himself of the weight of his conscience. "I'm not leaving until you tell me what you know." My voice was firm, and I felt the walls closing in around us, filled with the echoes of the past. There was a long, agonizing pause before he finally spoke. "All right, I'll tell you what I remember, but you have to promise me you can't let anyone else know." I nodded, desperate and determined. "I promise." As he began to speak, the words spilled out like a dam breaking. "There was a fight, yes, but before that, Alonso had been acting strange. He mentioned feeling like someone was watching him. I brushed it off as drunken paranoia, but..." He trailed off, his face contorting in pain. "But what?" I urged. "He was going to meet someone that night, someone important. He thought they had information about his family, things that could ruin them. I didn't think much of it then, but now..." He swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "Now you think it's connected to his murder?" I asked, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. "I don't know, but I can't shake the feeling that it is. I regret not following him that night. Things could have been different. I could have saved him." His voice cracked, and I could see the guilt etched deeply in his features. I took a deep breath, considering his words. "Did he say who he was meeting?" "No," he replied, his gaze dropping to the floor. "He only said it was someone he trusted, someone close." The weight of his revelation hung between us, thick and suffocating. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized just how close this was to home. "Thank you, Julio," I said quietly, knowing that this was just the beginning of a dark journey. As I left his house, the night enveloped me, a reminder of the shadows lurking just out of sight, waiting for me to uncover the truth. Later that night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning as images of Alonso filled my mind. I closed my eyes, hoping for a reprieve from the relentless questions swirling around me. But instead, I drifted into a vivid dream where Alonso stood before me, his eyes pleading. "Hector," he whispered urgently, "you're getting closer, but you need to be careful. They're watching you too." I woke with a start, my heart racing. The chill of his words lingered in the air, a cold reminder that the past was not done with me yet. I had to return to the cemetery, to the grave that bore his name, and dig deeper, both literally and metaphorically, into the secrets that had claimed his life. The moon hung low in the sky as I made my way to the archives, the chill of the evening air seeping into my bones. Isabel had agreed to help me, and though I felt a sense of urgency, I also sensed that we were treading on dangerous ground. The dark secrets of this town were not meant to be unearthed, but I couldn't turn back now. As we entered the dimly lit room, the smell of old paper and dust enveloped us. "Where do we start?" Isabel asked, brushing her fingers over the spines of forgotten books. "There's a diary," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Alonso mentioned it. It should hold clues about what really happened that night. With a determined nod, we began searching through the stacks of old documents. I felt the weight of Alonso's spirit pressing down on me, urging me to find the truth. As I rifled through the pages, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, the shadows in the corners of the room seeming to dance with a life of their own. "Here!" Isabel exclaimed, pulling out a worn leather-bound book. The cover was cracked, and the pages yellowed with age. My heart raced as I took it from her, the anticipation thick in the air. As we opened the diary, the faint scent of ink and paper filled my nostrils. The first few entries detailed Alonso's mundane life, but as we read on, the tone shifted. He wrote about his growing unease, his suspicions about those around him. "I fear for my life," I read aloud, my voice trembling. "There are whispers in the night, and I can't shake the feeling that someone close to me wishes me harm." Isabel's eyes widened. He suspected someone he trusted. Who could it have been? I pondered, my mind racing. Could it have been Julio? Or someone closer? Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the room, causing us both to jump. I glanced around, heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" Isabel nodded, her face pale. "Maybe we should." Before she could finish, the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for just a moment. When they returned, the air felt charged, and I could hear a soft whisper, barely discernible, but it sent chills down my spine. "Hector." "Isabel." "Did you hear that?" Isabel whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "It's Alonso," I said, my heart racing. "He's here." As we continued reading, strange occurrences intensified. The pages of the diary turned on their own, and shadows flickered at the edges of my vision. I could feel Alonso's presence, restless and desperate. "I found a letter hidden in my mother's things," I read, my voice steady despite the chaos around us. "It speaks of betrayal, of a family secret that could destroy everything I hold dear." "Family secrets," Isabel murmured. "That could explain a lot." Just as I was about to delve deeper into the diary, the door creaked ominously, and an elderly woman appeared in the doorway, her face shadowed but her eyes piercing. "Beware," she croaked, her voice raspy and filled with warning. "The truth you seek will bring doom upon you." Isabel and I exchanged glances, the weight of her words sinking in. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the unease creeping up my spine. "I am Maria," she replied, stepping closer. "I've seen what happens when the past is disturbed. You must leave this be." I shook my head, defiance rising within me. "We can't. Alonso deserves justice." "Justice?" she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You know not what you ask for. Some spirits are better left to their graves." With that, she turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving us in silence. "I don't believe her," I said, my voice firm. "We have to confront Carmen next. She was Alonso's lover. She might know something." Isabel nodded, but looked hesitant. "Hector, what if the truth is worse than we imagined? What if it tears the fabric of this town apart?" I felt the weight of her words but steeled my resolve. We can't turn back now. We owe it to Alonso. As we left the archives, the air felt heavier, the shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the whispers grew louder. I could feel Alonso's spirit urging us to move forward. And with each step, I knew we were getting closer to a truth that could change everything. I just hoped it wouldn't cost us our lives. The tension in the air was palpable as I stood in front of Carmen's house, my heart pounding against my ribcage like a caged bird, desperate to escape. The sun had just begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced ominously around us. Isabel stood beside me, her expression a mixture of determination and concern. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have to be," I replied, steeling myself. "Alonso deserves the truth." We stepped inside, the door creaking as if warning us of the confrontation that lay ahead. Carmen was sitting at the dining table, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes red from what looked like a recent bout of crying. She looked up, startled, and then narrowed her eyes at us. "What do you want?" she snapped, her voice sharp. "I have nothing to say to you two." "Carmen," I began, my voice steady despite the tumult in my stomach. "We need to talk about Alonso, about the night he was killed." Her gaze flickered to Isabel and back to me. "You shouldn't be here. You don't know what you're getting into." "Then help us understand," Isabel urged, taking a step forward. We're trying to find the truth for Alonso. He can't rest until his murderer is brought to justice." Carmen's expression softened for a moment, but then she hardened again. "Justice? You think that's what this is about? Alonso's family is full of secrets. Secrets that could destroy us all." "What do you mean?" I pressed, sensing that she was on the verge of revealing something crucial. "Alonso was close to finding out the truth about his father," she said, her voice trembling. "There were whispers, rumors about a betrayal that ran deep, a betrayal that could tear this town apart." Before she could elaborate, a loud crash echoed from the back of the house, causing us all to jump. The sound was like thunder reverberating through the walls. "What was that?" Isabel exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "Stay here," I shouted, instinctively moving toward the source of the noise. I pushed through the door leading to the backyard, and my breath caught in my throat. There, amidst the scattered pots and broken furniture, lay what appeared to be a locket. I picked it up, the metal cool against my palm. "Is that?" Isabel began, her voice trailing off as she stepped closer. I opened the locket cautiously, revealing a faded photograph of a young boy, his face strikingly familiar. This is Alonso as a child," I exclaimed, realization crashing over me like a wave. "Who is this boy?" Carmen had followed us outside, her face pale as she recognized the locket. "No, it can't be. He was supposed to be protected." "What do you mean?" I pressed, the pieces of the puzzle swirling in my mind. "What's this boy's connection to Alonso?" Carmen took a deep breath, her resolve crumbling. "That boy was Alonso's son. He had a child no one knew about. His family kept it a secret that could ruin them." A cold shiver ran down my spine. A child? But why would they keep it hidden? Was that why he was killed? Carmen's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because his family feared that if the truth got out, it would destroy everything. They were willing to do anything to protect their reputation." I felt the weight of the revelation pressing down on me, the implications settling like a heavy fog. Then the murder could have been an act of desperation, to silence Alonso before he could reveal the truth. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed by a chilling presence, as if Alonso's spirit were urging me to act. I glanced at Isabel, who looked equally shaken by the revelations. "We need to hurry," I said, adrenaline surging through me. "Alonso is trying to tell us something important. We can't let this linger any longer." As we prepared to leave, Carmen's voice caught my attention. "If you go digging deeper, you will awaken things you cannot control. The truth has consequences." "Consequences are nothing compared to what Alonso has endured," I replied, my voice firm. "He deserves peace, and we owe it to him to uncover the full truth." With that, we stepped back into the twilight, the darkness encroaching around us. I clutched the locket tightly, knowing it was a key to the truth we sought. The supernatural occurrences around me felt more intense now, as if the very air crackled with energy, pushing us forward in our race against time. Alonso's desperate calls echoed in my mind, urging me to piece together the fragments of this dark mystery before it was too late. The air was thick with tension as Isabel and I approached Ricardo's modest home. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced ominously across the cobblestones. My heart raced with anticipation and dread, knowing this confrontation could lead to the truth we desperately sought. "Are you ready for this?" Isabel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. As we knocked on the door, I felt a chill, as if Alonso's spirit was urging us on. The door creaked open to reveal Ricardo, his face pale and drawn. "What do you want?" he asked, suspicion etched across his features. "Ricardo, we need to talk," I said, trying to maintain my composure. "It's about Alonso." His eyes flickered with recognition and fear. "I have nothing to say about that," he replied, attempting to shut the door. "Please," Isabel interjected, stepping forward. "We know you were involved, and we deserve to know the truth." Ricardo hesitated, the weight of our insistence pressing on him. Finally, he stepped aside, allowing us to enter. The dimly lit room was cluttered with dusty relics of a past long buried. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us as we took our seats at a rickety table. "Why did you hide Alonso's body?" I pressed, my voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside me. Ricardo ran a shaky hand through his hair, glancing at the floor as if searching for the right words. I found him," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. But I didn't want to ruin our family's reputation. Alonzo was about to expose something that could destroy us all. What was it? Isabel demanded, leaning forward. He hesitated, his gaze darting around the room as if the walls themselves might be listening. Our family, we've kept secrets for generations. Alonzo discovered something about our father's past, something that would have shattered the image we've built. Just then, the air turned frigid, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned to see Alonzo's spirit materializing, his expression a mix of fury and anguish. "Ricardo," he growled, his voice echoing through the room, "you think you can hide from the truth forever?" Ricardo's face paled further, and he stumbled back in fear. "No, Alonzo, please," he cried, desperation lacing his voice. "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Alonzo's spirit seethed, his form flickering with rage. "You betrayed me, brother. You let them silence me." I watched in awe and horror as the two brothers faced off across the table, the weight of their shared history heavy in the air. It was a moment suspended in time where the past collided violently with the present. "Alonzo, we can help you find peace," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around us. "But we need the whole truth." Ricardo fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I was scared, Alonzo. I didn't know what to do." Alonzo's spirit hovered, his anger giving way to a deep sadness. "You let fear dictate your actions, Ricardo. You chose reputation over family." As the room filled with tension, I felt something shift within me. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. "Ricardo," I said slowly, "if Alonzo is your brother, then that makes us family too." Both brothers turned to me, shock written across their faces. "What do you mean?" Alonzo asked, his spirit wavering. "I've been piecing together the clues," I explained, my heart racing. "My grandmother, she mentioned a family connection, but I never understood until now." Alonzo's expression softened, his anger melting away like morning mist. "So you're part of this too?" "Yes," I said, determination coursing through my veins. "And we can break this cycle of vengeance together." Ricardo looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "You'll help me make this right?" "Only if you're willing to face the truth," I replied, my voice firm. Alonzo nodded slowly, his spirit glowing with a renewed sense of purpose. "Then let's end this once and for all." The weight of our collective past hung heavy in the air, but in that moment, I felt a connection to both brothers, a bond forged in pain and redemption. Together, we would uncover the truths that had haunted us for generations, and perhaps, in the process, free Alonzo's spirit once and for all. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope, piercing through the darkness.